Hi, everyone. Welcome to another edition of Big Business Blueprint live interviews, where we speak with one business leader and understand their personal and startup growth playbook, fundraising lessons, products and services they offer, and how they think about their market expansion, customer acquisition, retention, attracting talent, and building a tight knit workforce, and so on. I'm Bhuva Shakti, based in New York. I'm the founder of WalletMax. We are a global community of startups, investors, executives focused on increasing sustainable funding access, especially in climate tech, fintech, deep tech, and AI sectors. In my startup growth playbook interviews, the one we are in today, I typically invite a startup founder or co founder and invite them about their growth lessons. But more importantly, what differentiates them from the crowd? How do they prioritize impact along with profits and planet? We deep dive into their personal, professional, and startup journeys and their mission to uplift. Today, we are speaking with Brandi DeCarli, founding partner and CEO of Farm from a Box, and a recognized leader in climate smart agriculture. Brandi is driving a future where regenerative, nutritious food is accessible to all and where farmers earn a living income through sustainable production. Brandi serves on the board of directors for Hyper International. Brandy's startup Farm from a Box builds local food independence with clean technology and digital tools that power regenerative, climate resilient supply chains. Their next gen system integrates clean energy, adaptive irrigation, solar powered cold storage, and an AI ready data platform with API connected market access, thus enabling farmers to grow, store, and sell more efficiently while increasing profitability. Let me now hand over to Brandy and invite her to say a few words about her background and career path. Over to you, Brandy.
Thank you so much, Bhuva. I really appreciate that. And thank you for having me on as well. I'm honored. Boy, you really kind of nailed it with that introduction. It's been an interesting journey for me because I can't say I ever expected to get into agricultural technology. I was coming more from the philanthropic background and really seeing where aid was going and where aid was not going and what the communities needed. So
Mhm.
that's really the genesis of Farm from a Box was designed as a humanitarian solution and providing the communities with the tools that they needed to really be able to ensure that they have a good, sustainable production directly there within their community.
Thanks, Brandy, and thanks for joining us. I want to quickly ask you about your unique secret sauce. I mean, with your professional background and career path, you're in agri-tech. What was the pivotal moment in your life that has led you here?
There's been a few, but I will say that I think my personal secret sauce, which certainly goes into my professional approach as well, is I'm a connector. I'm such a big believer in the fact that we could go much further together as opposed to trying to do things in this one linear direction. And even previous to Farm from a Box, that was exactly what my approach was as a philanthropic advisor: was how can we pool people together to be able to leverage collective resources. And I do the same thing now. So really about forming strong alliances and partnerships to be able to really get things done.
Yeah, and I think especially since 2025, 2026, even now, a lot of people are focused on community and working together and doing things for the broader good. I see that trend happening. So I think we are in the right space. You are in the right space as well. Now, within this, why are you focusing on resilient food systems at Farm from a Box?
Resilient food systems are at the very core of our community health and well-being and our global economy. So I think that's really one of our highest leverage points when it comes to climate resilience, even in through health and local economies. So I think
Mhm.
that hits at such a square area. And for our real targeted segment that we work with, we specifically work with small and medium-sized growers, and they're the large majority of growers in the world, and certainly within the US, it's 90% of farms are small and medium-sized growers. but they're also the most underleveraged opportunity in agriculture. So the more we're able to equip them with the infrastructure and the digital tools that they need to fully be able to activate what their production could be, especially in the face of climate change, and connect with commercial markets, that's a big lever right there in terms of food supply, resilience, and economic production.
Yeah, you brought up a great point. Whenever I talk to people about climate or sustainability, they are always thinking about weather patterns, right? But it is also very important to note it's not just the weather patterns, but our food, our health, the air we breathe, the water we drink, and trying to focus on the small farmers who are like the 90%, like you mentioned, all over the world is really important because they need to focus on agriculture, farming, instead of other things that take away their precious time, right? And I believe you are helping them with that transition and making them more efficient in what they do really better, right?
Yeah,
Now,
thank you.
within this space, where do you see opportunities and challenges specific to market expansion? Maybe in the US and rest of the world, what have you seen last year? What do you see this year?
There's already been quite a few shifts in terms of market expansion and even on consumer demand. I mean, consumers are demanding more local food, also partly
Yeah.
because of food safety reasons. They want to know where their food is coming from and they prefer to buy local. Certainly, with changing political dynamics and policies, that comes into effect as well with tariffs and imports. So there's a number of different levers that are really happening right now. But I think in terms of market expansion, again, there's such a profound opportunity to work with the farmers that we have within our local communities, within our local regions, and throughout the country to have them be our core suppliers for commercial production and for local sourcing. The trick is they've got to be able to connect with those commercial level growers, have the quality there that's required for procurement and the traceability. So that's really that bridge that we're looking to connect is equip these farmers so that we can really make sure that they're being fully pulled in as high quality, reliable producers that procurement teams can count on.
Yeah, and you rightly mentioned, and you are in the food space, right? So time to market, time to value is really important. You can't just, like any other product, grow food this year and then probably send it to people next year. So local really makes sense, both
Mhm.
from a farmer and a consumer perspective. And during the pandemic, we saw a lot of challenges with supply chain. People think about products and raw materials, but food was a very important factor that we had
Mhm.
to undergo a lot of challenges in terms of supply and demand, right? So, where do you see challenges in terms of market expansion in your space today?
I mean, other than some of those challenges that I noted, I think one of the other big ones is in serving this market segment, it has to
Mhm.
be a solution that's also accessible because
Correct.
farmers, as you noted, they don't have a lot of time. The objective is how do you provide maximum value as
Mhm.
little risk as you could possibly provide them with proven solutions and really bundle that in something that is affordable for them. And that ties directly with some of the funding shifts that we've witnessed lately, which, is really in the past 6 years since COVID, things have changed dynamically. Our
Mhm.
own model has changed dynamically in this as well, in that we're now releasing a lease to own subscription model to be able to dramatically lower that barrier of entry for farmers and make sure that they get the system and for us, it also unlocks a much more predictive revenue stream and an ongoing SaaS subscription to our data platform too. So we're trying to provide maximum value, low cost, fully accessible in a solution that's really tailored to those farmers. We've even built in seasonally aligned payments so that it aligns with what the farmer's cash flow is, which is key to really being able to make sure that you're knowing your customers and providing an appropriate solution.
Yeah, one size fits all definitely doesn't fit here, right? Seasonal variation and cash flow adjustments are really important. And you earlier mentioned about the current political landscape and the tariffs, so it's also very much easier for us to grow here locally and source supply and demand. But then, if you see big corporations and private investors are shifting priorities in the sense when you talk about regenerative um, food systems or climate smart agriculture, they don't think about food that they need every day. Things are viewed in a different sense, right? So you have great experience in climate smart agriculture. Why do you think today innovating in mission aligned projects like yourself is important for the long term? And how do you balance profits and return on investment in answer to some of the investors you may be reaching out today?
Yeah, I love that question. Thank you, because it's very timely. You know, things may have changed outwardly in terms of how a lot of companies are outwardly speaking about what their priorities are, especially when it comes to climate. But I
Mhm.
have found that a lot of companies are still looking to advance regenerative agriculture and local sourcing. And it's not just a nice to have, of course it is, but it's good business. And so when they're now looking at de-risking what their supply chain is, it's smarter to be able to source locally. And regenerative agriculture has already been shown to outperform, especially in the long run, conventional ag. And so, these companies know what they're doing. So I think that that's a really big lever. In COVID, we were approached by a number of really large agri-food corporates for exactly that reason. How can we make sure that we're ensuring reliable procurement by activating more regional value chains? So I think that's still going to continue. We still just need to make sure food safety is there, traceability is there, and reliable orders are able to go through. Oh, you had a second part of the question, and now I lost it. Can you repeat that second part, because it was really good?
No, no issues. So how do you balance profits and return on investment when you are trying to fundraise, be it from private markets or grants, loans, or whatever the form is?
Yeah, I think that that's an important one. So number one, we have to make sure that as a company, we're really focused on not just a lovely climate solution, but really being able to provide ROI to our farmers first and foremost,
Mhm.
and to us as a company, so that our stakeholders and investors can also receive that, down to our partners. At the farm level, what are some of the big costs that farmers are facing? Crop loss that happens as a result of having no cold chain at their access. Sometimes that can be upwards of 40%, especially in areas where there's high heat waves that are happening, which is happening more often than not, or droughts where they need to make sure that they're preserving their crop and extending that growing season through drip irrigation. Those are big ones. And again, being able to activate a more efficient transactional relationship with business opportunities to buy their product, so that they have more options beyond a farmer's market or some of the really localized channels that they can do. We want to make sure that there's much broader access. So that's one, is to make sure that we're doing that. For us, the big driver is, if we keep our eye on the ball and we continue to provide the most value to farmers, we will grow and scale. And through that scale, we'll make sure that we're reaching the ROI that we're promising our investors as well, which is important.
Yeah, you rightly mentioned it's not about ROI for investors or stakeholders, but it should be cost efficient and accessible to your farmers first, right? So that they are able to continue to use it. In turn, it also produces positive impact on your bottom
Yeah,
line. And one other thing that you earlier mentioned is it's not about locally sourcing food that's good for people, but it's also cost efficient in the sense if the farmer is spending less, then obviously your product is going to cost less, but also much healthier because it's time to market very low, right?
that's exactly right.
Uh,
And I think innovating around the financial model has also been key, because, again, it's accessibility for the farmer to be able to get our product. But for us, it's also really building a sustainable and growing ARR for us. So we don't have these peaks and valleys that are project related, which is the situation that we've been in before we really get this subscription model going.
yeah, and unpredictable weather patterns, like you mentioned, drought, heat waves, we don't know when that happens. It's very difficult to even predict what could happen sometimes
That's
with the
right.
changing climate, right? Now, not many people may think about regulations in your industry because obviously everyone knows there is USDA and some local regulations, but not necessarily in terms of a company like yourself that could also face regulations. Have you had any challenges within this industry in US, cross-border, or globally in your current or past roles? What can you tell people about regulations beyond the USDA?
Yeah, I think there's a few different things that I can bring into this, which is number one, to clarify when we are providing our product to someone, it's literally infrastructure and digital tools. We do not ship any organics in there, so that's a big one in terms of regulations alone. We don't provide seeds, we don't provide any of those organics. So that skirts us around any of those challenges with that. We need to make sure, especially if we're trying to up level the opportunities for our farmers for commercial production, that there's gap safety reporting, that any of those compliance issues are being handled by us, at least by the tools that we can provide them to be able to help streamline that for the farmer. That's a big one. Another one that's coming into play is land access. A lot of new farmers are struggling with land access, and those the
Yeah,
leased land, you cannot have a permanent infrastructure built on that land. Even the parks departments are now starting to open that up for farming, but it has to be an impermanent infrastructure. So our system is well suited for that because it's a modular, flat pack, movable infrastructure if something happens with the land tenure and the farmer needs to move. The fact that we're modular uh, also lends itself well for being able to not have to deal with the same level of regulations that a permanent infrastructure would require us to do. So that's another. Oh, one other point now that my brain is really going. Uh, while we're focusing at this point in time in really scaling out throughout the US market, we have worked internationally as well. But every time that we do that, we set up local fabrication of our system directly there so that we, again, are working with the local policies and regulations and not necessarily something that's being shipped in from the United States.
yeah, that's really important, right? So modular and also very accessible. So you already spoke about accessibility, but in terms of data privacy, system security, and being more inclusive for different types of farmers, because you cannot customize for everyone, but you cannot also give one size fits all. So how do you balance data privacy, system security, and inclusion in your product and service decisions?
Yeah, especially now that we've really are a software integrated system. This is top of mind
Yeah,
for us. We're tracking a number of data points from in-field data points to core functionality of the equipment, also to make sure that we can report on the inputs, outputs of energy, temperature within the cold storage, etc. We try to keep everything really grounded in the production and where there could be potential risks at the production level and with the equipment so we can provide remote support. Any other data integrations that we're doing with some of these API partners that we have, which is digital market access or day-to-day management platforms, we make sure that those individual farmers' data is very secured because that's key, especially when we're doing transactions online. So
yeah,
we also are wanting to be able to leverage in-field data in particular so that farmers can also be incentivized for good practices. And to your point, it's not, one size fits all, especially when we work in outdoor regenerative agriculture. But how can we do carbon tracking if that needs to be something taken into account for reporting, but also for monetization opportunities for the farmer?
yeah. And some of this is also very technical in terms of farmers who just want to focus on their farming and agriculture uh, aspects, right? So, how do you translate some of this complex technical terms to farmers so they are able to build trust and easily adopt your product and then continue to become a repeat customer?
Yeah, so farmers are also one of the most under digitized
Mhm.
areas. And I think in my experience, it's so important to not just tech something up for the sake of teching it up. Unfortunately, there's a lot of solutions out there like that. It has to be grounded in providing real value to the farmer. And so we try to make sure that that's our number one North Star, and we communicate exactly that. Some farmers are going to want more. There's some farmers that are new to farming, but they've been in technology for years. And so they're really comfortable with this. And it's one of the things that they're attracted to about us. I could say the same thing for young farmers. But at the same time, we've worked in refugee settlements in Tanzania, and there was a big technology transfer and skills learning that needed to be there. And what I found was that you give them the training, they not only uptook that information, but they were able to help improve on it for us as well. So it's just keeping it really grounded in value, providing that training, and seeing what other opportunities may be able to be born around that by listening to the farmer feedback.
And since you mentioned tech hype, not adding technology for the sake of it, I have to really ask this question. What do you think about AI today? Every company and every startup is an AI company, right? So, what is your thought process around that? Do you have it in your solution? Do you
Yeah.
plan to bring it in? How do you build trust at that time?
We do. So I mean, to your point, everybody's talking about AI now, and it has shot up vertically from being niche to now being something that's involved in all of our day-to-day lives at this point.
Yeah.
So number one, I'm a big believer in making sure that we keep these technologies accessible to people so that we don't broaden that gap. And there's huge promise with how AI can be used for farmers. I do have the privilege of serving on the Heifer International Board of Directors, and I have learned a tremendous amount about value add ways that AI is being integrated directly within their programs, how AI is helping guide rural Nepalese women farmers with better market pricing. So we're
Mhm.
taking very much that same approach of how can AI be integrated into our data system for the purpose of optimization, uncovering new opportunities, getting quicker information. And so we are integrating that. But again, we're keeping everything very values driven. And it's got to be able to provide a benefit to the farmers.
Yeah, if there is no AI integrated, are you able to provide better service? If yes, you don't need AI. If it's going to help, then probably integrate it. So that's the way to go. Yeah, like you mentioned, it's not a vertical anymore. It's in every industry, every um, part of our life, right? Now, with this, I just want to quickly check in also. How has success been for you? Do you have some case studies or examples or customers, companies that you have won personally from Farm from a Box that you want to share? Also, tell us a mistake that you made. How did you navigate? Are there any valuable lessons?
I don't know if we have enough time to be able to talk about the learned lessons and the mistakes, um, or the successes, to be honest with you. I mean, that is part of the entrepreneurial journey is it's an adventure and you're uncovering so many things along the way. I think out of the gate, early on, we were very hardware centric, very focused
Mm,
on renewable power, drip irrigation, solar powered pumping, and cold storage. And then we learned through that we needed to make sure that a part of scalability was to understand how we could serve our farms, especially if something goes awry. And so we ended up pulling in this software system that allowed us to be able to provide remote support. And it was a
mhm.
huge benefit, huge benefit. So from that, we've continued to learn and evolve. And there were huge successes with that. And we have found over the years that our infrastructure alone helps dramatically increase high quality production and decrease losses. But then what? So then that uncovered another layer of an opportunity where we're like, okay, wait a minute. We now need to make sure that we're also digitally connecting in improved market access. And that was a learning. We were developing a big value chain project at the time in Uganda, and that's what stimulated that idea is we didn't have the capability to be able to ease those transactions and digitally tie that market platform, and so now we do. And that can be regionalized and that can be done according to whatever market that that farm is serving. So there's been a number of learned lessons. We're no longer in a shipping container because we were starting to lose projects with the fact that it was too heavy, it was too bulky, it took too
Yeah.
long, to retrofit these things. So now we're in these really cool flat pack, eco modular, think IKEA Billy bookcase that allows us to scale at a way that we weren't able to before. So everything is a learning. And I have learned you've just got to be really open to uncovering what those are so that you can illuminate the blind spots. And those blind spots are big opportunities. You just have to make sure that your eyes are open to them.
Yeah, actively learning, actively listening from everything that happens is really important. Sometimes when I see founders or even investors or even leaders in the corporate sector, when there is a failure, everything is going in a downward spiral. But if we step back and see what's the lesson that we have learned that we can improve upon, and I think it adds a great deal of benefit to everyone.
Oh, that's
Now, with
exactly
this,
right. I think, sorry to cut you off on that, but we've got a saying that our team says every day is a school day. Every day is a school day, and we have got to make
yeah.
sure that we are adaptable, not losing that focus with our North Star, but adaptable with how we get to that North Star.
Yeah, and it's not only for our business, with so many things changing geopolitically, economically around us every day. If we don't have that school day, like you mentioned, in every company, then it's going to be very difficult to kind of adapt to whatever is happening today. Right?
Yeah.
No, thanks for sharing that. And I also want to check in with you. Do you have any advice or resources for someone getting into entrepreneurship as a founder or co-founder like yourself? Especially if they are not part of the insiders club, they don't have the right network. How can someone get started and become a founder or a co-founder like yourself?
Yeah, there's some key learnings that I have gained over the years, and I would say number one, activate your network. And if you don't have a network to activate, go build it. Just go
Mm.
talk to people and meet as many people as you can because you have no idea who could make an introduction, who could join your team, who could be an advisor, who could be an investor. And so network, 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 network. And within that, make sure that they're genuine relationships. Be real. We're thank God we're kind of out of the days where you're just collecting business cards because that doesn't ever really work anyway. So really focus on making real relationships. The other thing that I would say if you're just starting out is really look to build your team like a superhero collective, right? Like I have these skills, you have these skills that I don't have, but I complement you
Hmm.
in this way. So you really want to think about differentiation and being in a complementary segment with who it is that you bring on board. It's so, so, so important. I'm not technical. So pull somebody in my team that is very technical. I'm not an expert in data, but I've got an expert in data. So really think about how do you make that whole pie, even when you're working with just slices of yourself. The You want to make sure that you've got people that have different perspectives and different skills, because again, that will also make sure that you illuminate those blind spots and see different opportunities, and that makes you a much more resilient team. Same approach as business. I think you've got to make sure that you've got the right team around you.
Yeah, there's no perfect time to start building your network, right? And typically you build your network long before you need something. And also, like you mentioned, it should not be transactional. You keep the connection warm. You don't know where your next opportunity is going to come from. Maybe you don't meet your investor, but someone can introduce you to someone who can be your investor, right?
Yeah.
So
And don't be afraid to
thanks
ask
for sharing that.
questions. I am a first-time founder myself, and I've had so many learnings, but you can't be afraid to ask questions. And if somebody says something where they're talking about, oh, TAM and ARR and all of this, if you don't know what those things are, ask and self-educate yourself. Like really do that behind the scenes work to make sure that you're you're knowledgeable with it and can really speak to what your approach is, what choices you're making and why, because that's key.
Yeah, and you don't have to have all the skills. Delegating and working together as a team where we complement each other is also really important. I mean, I could not agree more on that. I have so many skills that I rely on from my own team, and it's a great partnership when you work together. You're not really trying to learn everything and stretching yourself when your focus is needed on a single area of
Yeah, forget it.
business.
You got to be lean and mean and just really bold. You can't wait for something to feel perfect because you may miss your window. So you really just got to get started and build what your solution is, and know that you can change along the way. But as long as you're really solving for an actual problem, I think that will steer you straight. Just know that there's going to be changes. It's never going to be the first concept. It will always evolve, and that's a good thing.
Yeah, and you rightly mentioned about being perfect before starting or doing something. And I've seen this quite a lot with founders that are trying to, especially fundraise. They're like, okay, I need this. I need to perfect this. I need to have this. Everything ready and set. And one day that I'll mark on my calendar, I'll start fundraising. So, what advice do you have for some of those emerging startup leaders, especially when it comes to fundraising? When can they start? How can they start? Do they need everything to be aligned perfectly, or is it more a iterative process?
This question is also timely because the market has really changed over the past few years. And so
Hmm.
I would say, you can't wait for things to be perfect, but my recommendation at this point is really build a solution to a problem and focus on driving revenue as much as you
Hmm.
possibly can before you even go out for trying to fundraise. If you say, "Oh, I've got an idea, this is what it is," try to prototype that in one way or another. Thankfully, there's a lot of technological skills that AI can help with this at this point. Get those initial users in, try to get some of that initial revenue in. Again, recognizing that it's going to change, but that's going to be your key lever for raising funds, especially in this market too. The more you're able to do that, the better you are.
Yeah, I mean, it need not be the perfect product, but even a prototype is good enough. Like you said, a lot of technologies, AI could be a good um, help there. So, in terms of experienced corporate professionals, so with the changing market and the fundraising landscape, even a lot of corporate professionals are looking to transition into entrepreneurship, be it investor facing or internal roles. Probably you are hiring some of them in your teams as well. So, what advice do you have for someone who's in the corporate sector trying to get into the
Mm.
startup ecosystem, be it as a founder, co founder, or any other roles?
Yeah, boy, there's a lot of really top talent that's out there right now, and that's the benefit of an unfortunate situation. I think
Mhm.
coming from both, UN lens, humanitarian lens, where there's been a lot of changes alongside corporate, I would just really encourage people to be open with what it is that they can provide. There's a big difference in getting involved with entrepreneurship in that you're wearing every hat. And even when you've got a team, you're still kind of wearing a little bit of everything. So it's not
Yeah.
as direct of like, these are my responsibilities and anything outside of that, is not a part of my core work. Throw all of that out of the window and roll up your sleeves and just be ready to expand your own capacity in many ways, to make sure that your entrepreneurial journey, whether you're joining a company or starting a company, you're going to have to think broadly. So I think that that's a big one right now.
Yeah, like you said, there is a lot of good talent, and look for those transferable skills that you can apply
Mhm.
in the startup ecosystem, right? Now,
I'd
within
also
this
add, oh,
space,
I'm sorry, Bhuva. It's such a good question, and I think I would also add the to know the wealth of your network. You may be
mhm,
coming from a certain corporate background, but you've built an incredible network within that professional capacity. And so make sure that you really continue to nurture that and you're not just one and done, but you stay in touch with your colleagues, you stay in touch with the leadership, because you never know how that is going to pan out, for your entrepreneurial journey. So to keep those relationships close too, because they could pay significant dividends down the line.
Yeah, and even large companies, banks, financial institutions, they are building small startup units within their own companies, right? So you may not transition fully out of corporate to go to a startup to join in a particular role, but maybe there is a startup initiative within your own company. So being in touch with your network is really important at the moment. Now, are there communities you relied on during your growth transition as an industry leader in the startup founding space?
I relied on a number of them. Also because, I mean, quite honestly, I wasn't at the time coming from a direct agricultural background per se. So I needed to make sure that I was really integrating myself within those networks, that I could drink from the wisdom of what they were doing and
Yeah.
make those connections. So there was a number of them, from certainly climate organizations, farmer organizations, agricultural organizations, down to, for me, working with female founders and female investors. That was a very powerful niche for me in the beginning, especially. Um, and I think, any of those where there's more of a relationship building, if you can join, masterminds where you're surrounded by other CEOs, even if they're in different spaces, those I've learned a tremendous amount from, even in sectors that are not anywhere near what we're doing. I've learned some very powerful lessons from them. So, again, power of the network, the power of the network. My engagement in working with you at Wallet Max and the Emerald Summit has been wonderful. So I would just really highly encourage, get involved in a number of different organizations. Sometimes, even if they're outside of what your planned sector is, that's where a lot of
Mhm.
insights can also come up, is when you kind of cross discipline it a little bit more.
Yeah, and again, thanks for your support also for Wallet Max and Emerald Summit and everything that we do. But I couldn't agree more. It's about communities and also the mastermind, right? Meaning you don't have to be in the same industry or type of work to network. That's one misconception out there. Okay, I'm in climate space, I'm in food space, I'm in healthcare. I need to only network within this space. And that's the first thing you need to come out of. You can network with a lot of people outside your industry. There are transferable skills and learnings from everyone. It's a matter of relationship building, like you mentioned.
Yeah, it provides huge benefits, and to be honest with you, I think one of our big benefits and differentiating factors is that we really think in terms of a network, and how we
Mhm.
interconnect that network. And so the more you're able to do that, I think the better your business approach is also going to be. I mean, things are evolving dynamically. Any news alert that we see how quickly things are changing. And so if you even approach the foundations of your business as in terms of a network, I think that that's a huge, huge benefit for company resilience, but also how much further you can actually get in the market too.
Yeah, and at the start, we spoke about AI not being a vertical, it's in every industry and every part of our life. Same way, networking, don't be restricted within your industry, talk to other people. Now, in terms of emerging trends, I know we spoke a little bit earlier about some of the trends. What are some futuristic trends that you are excited about? And without sharing any confidential or sensitive data, what are the key elements of your company's strategy for winning and retaining customers that others can learn from?
Yeah. What are some of the key strategies that I want to bring up? Because there's certainly some big ones. I think that there's a big realization now that taking a systems perspective is a big
Mhm.
benefit. Um, when we first started off, there are many advisors and investors that were like, no, 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 you can't offer all of these things. You have to choose one. But one of our big differentiating factors is that we aren't just a point solution. We provide the system that farmers need, and we've continued to build upon that with strategic partnerships. So I think things are shifting more through that lens of how can we really think about things through a system approach, and not to overcomplicate it, but just where are those avenues that can really be high leverage opportunities and can basically be a multiplier in the value that we provide. So I think that's a big one. Seeing a lot of that happen now, which I'm very pleased about. Um, Through every challenge, innovation is born, and through these funding shifts that have happened, we're seeing some really innovative funding models come out now, and really start to scale more, which I think is incredibly important so that it's no longer these individual buckets of philanthropic, charitable dollars, corporate dollars. Like, forget all of that. How can we all work to de risk and move something forward? And some of those new funding models I think are really incredibly important, of which we also like to really activate. On our side, it's really a matter of how do we how do we think to scale? How do we really be able to sort of round off the hard edges that we've experienced? What are those friction points? Innovate on the product, which we've done, but also those mechanisms like opening up API access to value add platforms that can really be able to differentiate us in the market, and also make sure that we've got the right funding mechanism for the farmers to be able to get our solution, especially since it's a capex purchase. We've got to
Hmm.
make sure that
Yeah.
we're making it broadly accessible.
Yeah, and like you rightly also mentioned, systems thinking is coming back. For some period of time, it was an outdated concept. It was very legacy, but now people are thinking in terms of systems and putting things in place that are solving bigger challenges,
Mhm.
scaling fast for the most majority of the people. So that's a good one. Thank you so much
Yeah,
for
it's
sharing
all
that.
interconnected. So, the pendulum swings. Like, yes, focus is incredibly important, and being able to really understand and see the scope of what's going on in the system and where those big opportunities are, I think is an incredible benefit. And it just makes for a much more resilient approach. I'm a big believer.
No, me too. Me too. Count me in. Now, obviously, you should have competitors. So, how do you position yourself uniquely when you compare to your competitors locally, regionally, nationally? And how are you different from the broader ecosystem in terms of expanding your startup?
Yeah, I think one of the key ones, as I noted before, is there's a lot of point solutions that are out there.
Mhm.
Individual, irrigation solutions, individual power solutions, individual cold storage solutions, and all of those are great and very meaningful and needed. We're just very different in that we have pulled all of those together within a holistic solution that's really geared for outdoor agriculture. People often see us and they're like, "Oh, I see a modular container. You must be hydroponic, CEA." And we've really flipped it inside out. So that's another differentiator. I think I think the same secret sauce that I noted within my own personal life is kind of the same secret sauce that we have within the company too, is establish really good partnerships and really good
Mhm.
alliances so that we make sure that our approach is we're providing the top approach that we possibly can in terms of equipment and technology, but we're also really working with those partnerships that can help us reach our targeted market segment in a good way. So I think that's really one of the big ones is we've really kind of plugged into this node network approach, and, and it's a big one to be involved in.
Yeah, and you also earlier rightly mentioned going further together, right? So, having partnerships is going to only help you scale much faster than trying to, safeguard your point solution to a small market, which is not going to help you scale much farther if you want to grow your business.
That's
Now,
right.
have you had challenges? Yeah, go ahead.
Oh, I'm sorry, Bhuva, I keep doing this, but I
No
think
problem.
one of the other benefits to that is you never know who could be a merger or acquisition partner. That could be a
Yeah,
competitor of yours. So make sure that you're really keeping that open scope of who are the players, who could help us get to where we're going, and sometimes that could surprise you too. Sorry, please do go ahead with the next question.
no, this is good. So I also want to touch upon on the partnership that you mentioned. So obviously there are a lot of success stories, and it helps you to scale and also build relationship and trust at the local level, which is very important for farmers. Have you had challenges in trying to get partnerships or retaining partnerships? What has been your journey there?
Yeah, there's been a lot of learned lessons there because you know, as much as I say partnerships, you have to make sure that they're well aligned partnerships
Yeah,
that are going to be in alignment with what resources are needed, time allotments. Some partnerships can really suck a lot of time from you, and that it may not provide the
yeah,
ROI that you were hoping. So I think you've really got to be mindful of being as strategic as you possibly can with who those partners are and what the relationship is. This is what we're hoping to get out of it. This is what you want to get out of it, and keeping that line very clear out of the gates. You want it to be a win-win. So I think that's one big one. You know, another big one to bring up is that we are an infrastructural tool. We don't provide training. And so we've classically had to make sure that even for new farmers, there was some sort of training support in terms of day to day farming, especially if they were brand new. So we've always had to partner with whether it's ag extension agents or different nonprofits or other organizations that are providing the training. And you got to keep those things in mind where it could be very beneficial on both sides, but you've got to be smart with who those alignments are.
yeah. Well aligned partnerships. That's the key word. That sometimes you would spend a lot of time building a partnership, and if it is not the right fit, people think a very long time trying to, should I break the partnership because I've spent too much time and effort already? But then that's also a very important decision as a founder or as a C-suite leader in a startup that needs to make the decision. Okay, is it worth the time spent already, or is it worth the time
Yeah,
spending going forward? Right?
that's
Yeah,
right. You need to know what are those deliverables that you want to have through this partnership. Sometimes, having a big partnership can be very validating, but
yeah,
there's still got to be something that needs to come through the other side. If that's shared media, if that gives you validation, that's great. But be very clear with what those outcomes are and what you want that relationship to be. Otherwise, you may be disappointed. And to your point, it may just be more time consuming than producing the results that you're aiming for.
yeah. Win-win strategy always works, be it in partnerships or anything else. Now, are there any KPIs that you prioritize more than others, specific to your company, your customers, your partners, generally in your industry?
Yeah, I mean, I think one of the big ones for us is, do you have a high production rate? High production rate, whether we're working on a project that is for food security and nutritional security, or whether it's a commercial project, it still needs to be, is my production there? Are my losses lower? Am I saving money and am I making more? I think those are some of the really big ones. Of course, there's some projects that, on a, to be honest with you, secondary level, what are my emissions reductions? How much am I saving water? But it's still foundationally, it comes down to, am I producing more? Am I losing less? Am I saving more money and making more money?
Hmm. Comes down to the basics. Yeah. And do you think about the global expansion strategies for your startup? If that's in the cards, do you mind elaborating it for us?
Yeah, we started off working internationally in addition to the US market, and there's huge opportunities there. And we will absolutely get there again. We want to make sure that we're running with this subscription model here within the US first before we bring that overseas, just because we're familiar with the complexities. So we want to make sure that again we're rounding off those hard edges here within the US market. Um, International expansion is really going to be partnership driven. So
Mhm.
that with the right partners on the ground, I know we keep saying partners, but honestly, it's a big one when you enter a new market. You've got to
Yeah.
have tried and true partnerships that you can count on, whether that's for more localized assembly, whether that's for connecting with a market that you're unfamiliar with. I think it's really got to be partner driven also.
Yeah, and I cannot agree more. I remember one of the startups that was in solar energy space. They were able to expand very quickly in one of the states in US, but they were not able to successfully expand in another state. So it's the same business, same solution that they are trying to scale because they didn't have local support. They didn't understand what works for that market. Even though they have been successful in one US state, they could not even expand it to one more US state. So
Yeah.
market expansion really depends on the local partnership and what works for them. And while you learn in the current market, trying to build those on the ground relationships.
That's
So thanks
exactly
for
right, and
sharing
it's not necessarily tied to demand, right?
that.
You may
Yeah.
still have that market segment that has a shared problem that your solution addresses directly, but if you don't have a way of being able to connect to them and really be able to bring that solution to market, it may not be the wisest expansion. You've got to make sure that you've got the right channel access too. So, yeah, I couldn't agree more with you on that one.
Yeah, no, thanks so much, Brandi. And I know we are kind of coming up time also. I wanted to check in with you. If there is anything else you'd like to share with our audience before we wrap up, how can people get in touch with you, your company? What is the ask, if you have any for today?
Yeah, well, I think one of my closing statements that I think is really, really key, especially now, I mean, here we are at the end of January, and we're coming out of a year of huge disruption and uncertainty, and it's clearly not slowing. So I
Hmm.
think that we need to really look at where we can drive change, how we can get there faster together, shifting from old models to really looking at a different approach. I keep trying to tell myself also, how do I make sure that I'm looking at things differently, and to give yourself that reminder of, am I doing the same thing or am I doing it differently? And sometimes even just putting that lens on your thought process can uncover something, so that you're not just repeating things in a changing environment.
Yes.
And we need solutions. We need solutions. And so, yes, there's a lot of uncertainty in the market, but at the same time, times of big disruption and challenge are also fertile, fertile, fertile ground for new innovations. So, for
Hmm.
anyone
Yeah.
watching that is curious to get into entrepreneurship, yes, it's going to be wild, it's going to be an adventure, but it could also be one of the most rewarding things that you do. And we need your solutions. In terms of me, the easiest way of being able to get in touch with me directly is through LinkedIn. I try to make sure that I check it often, but that would be a very good source as well. We're in the middle of a fundraise ourselves. So if there's funders out there that are interested in what it is that we're providing in terms of really strengthening small and medium sized growers with technology, please reach out. I'm interested to talk with you. Um, and I think that's it. Climate resilience is not a nice to have. It's mitigating business risk at the same time. If we want to be able to have strong economies, we're going to have to think about climate. So I think, there's a lot of room here, and a lot of the talk that's out there right now is just, it's really not accurate. These are very pending problems with big, big need for solutions, and we have a lot of the solutions. We just need to drive them forward.
Yeah, like you also rightly mentioned, that we need the innovation, especially time for disruption. Could be the time where more innovation comes into picture. And climate change is not a discussion anymore. We have gone from the times where we were talking about mitigation to now we are talking more about adaptation, resilience. So in such a short amount of time, I didn't expect that discussion to happen at least for until another 5 to 10 years, but we are doing it in 2026. Just a
That's
quick
right. Here
follow-up
we are.
question. Who is your ideal investor category? I wouldn't say investor, but category in the sense, are you more looking at climate tech investors, infrastructure, agri-tech, or all of the above? I mean, who are kind of the ideal categories of investors for you?
Yeah, climate tech certainly is a big one. People that are really funding node network infrastructure, that's a big one for us right now as well, because we're far beyond just an ag tech solution. Um,
Yeah,
Investors that really see the value, the business value, in addition to environmental and impact value of regenerative agriculture and strengthening those local food systems. That's a big one for us. Um, certainly data, but again, that kind of falls into the node network. But investors, they want to do something good and get a good return and be proud of what it is that they're doing.
yeah, get a good ROI, plus also invest in something that's long term, beneficial for them and their communities and families. Thanks a
That's
lot,
right.
Brandy, for sharing.
Oh, thank you so much, Bhuva. I really appreciate it. It's been a pleasure.
And I hope we meet each other in one of those events that's coming up. Good luck for 2026. And if there is anything I can support with, do reach out. Thank you so much for joining us.
Thank you so much. Really appreciate it.